latest China-US trade talks concluded on Wednesday. What are the outcomes this time and what's next? DPRK's leader Kim Jong-un visited Beijing this week, his fourth time in China in less than 1 year. What was his purpose this time? And a paradise for techies. The Consumer Electronics Show was in full swing this week in Las Vegas, but fewer Chinese exhibitors showed up this year. Why the drop? Welcome to The Point, an opinion show coming to you from Beijing. I'm Li Xin. China and the U.S. wrapped up their trade talks at the vice-ministerial level in Beijing on Wednesday, the third day of their negotiations. According to a statement released by China's Ministry of Commerce, both sides have actively implemented the significant consensus reached by the leaders of the two countries and conducted extensive, in-depth and detailed exchanges on trade and structural issues of common concern, and that the talks had enhanced mutual understanding and laid a foundation for addressing each other's concerns. The Office of the U.S. Trade Representative also posted a statement on what was discussed during the negotiations in Beijing without giving comments on what was achieved and what next steps would be. So how productive was this latest round of talks? And with the trade truce coming to an end on March the 2nd, what are the possible next steps? Joining me in the Beijing studio is Han Hua, a fellow at the Zhongyang Institute for Financial Studies at Renmin University. But before the discussion, let's first hear what the spokesperson for China's Ministry of Commerce said on Thursday afternoon during a presser. Let's listen in.
During the talks between delegates of China and the United States, both sides actively implemented the agreements reached by the two leaders. Both sides had held extensive, deep and thorough exchanges on trade and structural issues. The two countries strengthened understanding and pushed to reach a solution on the issues of concern to both.
So welcome to the studio, by the way, Han Hua. For the audience who are not very familiar with the way to understand Chinese official rhetoric, it might be very subtle, right? The messages are kind of hidden in there. He didn't really say the talks went well, the talks failed, but rather he said we reached a greater understanding of each other's concerns and it laid the foundation for addressing each other's concerns. Exactly what's the Chinese judgment of how these talks went?
I think this is the positive note, but presented in a very diplomatic manner by the Chinese side. And we can also see that from the U.S. side, they did mention some specific issues that both sides discussed. So if you take this both statements or press release into consideration together, you can see that both sides actually has one consensus in mind when they're going to the negotiation table and come out of the talking room, which is to lay a foundation for the future talks and to seek the further guidance from the senior level.
Why has the Chinese been very low-key in terms of the progress of the talks? You know, they're not making a big deal out of it, although they said it did lay the foundation. Are they reserving about what possibly can happen next? Because we still have about 50 days till the end of the deadline.
First, to be a little bit conservative is also a manner of Chinese diplomatic ways in dealing or communicating with the outside world. And I think I want to add in this specific case, because that President Trump or the U.S. side has been retracting from the already reached deals in the past. For example, the last March, actually the two sides had reached consensus on not having the trade wars, but still President Trump announced solo about this trade war or the tariff adding on the Chinese goods. So I think this time the Chinese side, as well as the United States, they also said they want to seek the further guidance from Trump or from the Trade Representative Office. So both sides are a little bit conservative or reserving from the agreements or the negotiations they have reached during the past 3 days.
Yeah, and nevertheless, the White House Press Secretary Sanders, she expressed optimism, right, towards the talks, and she said that we are hopeful. I guess she meant the White House, the Trump administration, are hopeful that we can make a deal with China. How much should we pay attention to what she said here?
Because her boss said already tweeted that the negotiations went very well. So we can only bet on, or we hope that the further steps will be seriously taken for the next steps. For example, the discussions and also the specific issues discussed between the two parties can be brought back seriously to the two senior officials. Just like in the past, even the two parties had not met each other face to face before the 2 days meetings. They have been working on the issues significantly and hardly during the past months. So the two parties need to move on based on the foundation they laid from the face-to-face meeting in Beijing.
What do you think they could possibly take as some kind of a approach, you know, in different phases? Possibly, do you think that's going to be the case? For instance, we agree on greater purchases of U.S. goods to balance the trade deficit, to address the trade deficit issue, and for the more complicated structural issues when it comes to China's economy model or to China's trade practices, maybe that can come later. Is that how you see it?
Yes. Also, I can see that there also need the joint efforts from the U.S. side. We also need their commitment or the seriousness and the sincerity to honor their words when Chinese agreed or promised to buy more goods from the and opening up the market to the U.S. side to reduce the trade deficit.
Exactly. We noticed that in the statement of the U.S. Trade Representative Office, it says that officials also discussed the need for any agreement to provide for complete implementation subject to ongoing verification and effective enforcement. While addressing a relevant question, spokesperson for the Chinese Ministry of Commerce, Gao Feng, said the Chinese side also believes that an implementation mechanism is very important, as in the case of any agreement, and that both sides have the obligation of implementation. What is China's stance here? Why does he stress that point?
Of course, because this is a two-way street. We cannot just need verification from the U.S. side. We also need to verify their commitment. Like whether they can honor their words if there are some agreements reached, because, for example, if we buy more goods from the agriculture sector, from the financial services sector, from the other sectors, what can they offer back? What is their counteroffer, and how can they honor their counteroffer at the same time?
So there's also different wording, for instance, as to what was talked about. For instance, the Chinese Ministry of Commerce statement says the talks has enhanced a mutual understanding and laid a foundation to addressing each other's concerns, whilst the U.S. statement listed a number of outstanding concerns, including structural changes in China with regard to forced technology transfer, intellectual property protection, non-tariff barriers, and persistent trade deficit and structural issues. Do you think the two sides left the talks seeing each other eye to eye?
I think there's at least one point that they left the talks seeing eye to eye, which is they are trying very hard and very sincerely to reach the agreement or the consensus reached by the two presidents back in Argentina. This is one point or one consensus the two parties agree. But on the specific issues, we need more talks down the road.
Okay, thank you very much, Han Hua. We're going to leave it there. A fellow at the Chongyang Institute for Financial Studies of Renmin University. You're watching The Point with me, Liu Xin. We'll take a short break. And when I come back, Kim Jong-un was in Beijing this week, but why?